May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths crossed his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever you want within the limits of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Today, we begin a new series, Tassajara Stories. These will be posted on Tuesdays, just like the chapters for Crooked Cucumber were. I ended Crooked Cucumber with two outtakes, I called them, two pieces that had been cut. And the last one I read was about Elsie Mitchell. God, I hated to cut that. And I hope to include it. I hope to include both of them in a revised second edition of Crooked Cucumber that I'm putting together, with hopes that the publisher will be interested, and I have yet to contact them. Don't really know how to. All my contacts are gone there. And so, and they don't like to talk to writers, which they call authors. They like to talk to agents. But my agent is retired and is now an advisor. So really, I'm his assistant is what it is. So if they say that, I'll say, well, I'm an assistant to Michael Katz, my co-conspirator in all these ventures, back from the first, back from Thank You and Okay in Americans in Failure in Japan, still in print. That chanting you heard that opened up this podcast is the chant we would give before a lecture at Tassajara, and in this case, before a lecture by Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, in February 1st of 1970 was that particular one. So what I'm going to do is start reading drafts from a book I have in mind to do called Tassajara Stories, The Early Years with Shunryu Suzuki. And my idea for this book is it concentrates not on Suzuki, but on all of us, on everybody that passed through, and well, not everybody, on the students and the guests and the whole gang. So we'll see what happens. I've already got more written than could be used in a book, but a lot of it is clearly would be snipped away, and I think there has to be more made. And I don't have an overall concept for how it would be put together. I just have parts. That was true for Thank You and Okay. Crooked Cucumber was mainly chronological. It was very close to chronological. There was just a little going back and forth here and there. But both Thank You and Okay and Crooked Cucumber were, I sort of didn't know what I was doing. They sort of came together toward the end. Even though Crooked Cucumber was chronological, I was not confident about it. Really. I thought, oh God, I'll just publish it and leave the country and go hide somewhere in Asia in disgrace because I had an advance and all that. But they worked out all right. I don't necessarily have great confidence in this one either. It's been fun putting all these pieces together. Maybe it'll just end up being a bunch of podcasts, but we'll see. I've been working on it for, good Lord, 5 or 6 years here in Sanur, and I'll work on it quite a bit, and then some other project will come up. There have been a number of other projects, Cuke Archives projects, that have been very, very time-consuming. When they come up, put the energy in them and leave the Tassajara Stories stuff behind. But now I'm going to try to force it by a little bit anyway, by reading this and, seeing if I can put something together or whatever. So anyway, the first one takes place in the summer of 1970 at Tassajara, and it's just called Summer. And look, I haven't looked at this in months and months. I don't know how long it's been, maybe a year. And I'm not going to go over it before I read it, because when I read it, I'll, make little notes. I'll pause the audio and make little notes, or just mark. I go XXX right in the middle of the transcript. I'm reading for a point to go back to. And then, I might go over it individually with some advisors, or just keep moving on and go back to it. We'll see. I don't know. Okay, so after pause to meditate, we will go right into summer 1970. So when you hear the bell, hit pause. Meditate or not or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And then we'll hit the bell and go right into summer 1970. Which is not chapter 1. It's just one of the draft pieces for Tassajara Stories, The Early Years with Shunryu Suzuki. Tassajara Stories, The Early Years with Shunryu Suzuki. Summer, 1970. In the summer of 1970. No, I don't need to say that. It's the name of the thing. I'm just going to start it off here. All right. Didn't get through the first sentence. All right. Let's just start it off this way. Mel Weitzman was Shunryu Suzuki's Tassajara Jisha, personal attendant. The prior spring, he'd been Shuso, head monk, for the first practice period, led by guest teacher Sotan Tatsugami, who'd come all the way from Japan. Mel had taken a leave of absence from the Berkeley Zendo, which he'd been in charge of since 1967. Not sure. I think 1966, but we'll see. A couple of years before, he was ordained by, I have Suzuki, but I can't start off the first time saying that. He'd been ordained by Shunryu Suzuki. Maybe I should go over before I read it. As a priest. Mel was considered a senior, not only Zen-wise, but in age, too, as he was the all of 43 that year. He'd been a bohemian who had hung out. No, he'd been a bohemian who hung out in North Beach, an artist, and above all, to me, a flautist who played with Terry Riley, including on the famed experiment in C. Incidentally, he was not above all a flautist. I learned in his podcast that he, that's just something he took up with Terry Riley, and he was playing more the recorder. But anyway, I didn't, when he was at Zen Center in the later years, there wasn't anything about him being an artist. And there were so many people in the Zen Center from the Art Institute that Mel was not considered one of them, one of the artists. Maybe the older people who'd been around longer thought that. But I didn't really know that. I just hear about it from now and then, and we go, oh, he used to be an artist. Suzuki told Mel that in Japan, the Jisha is very close to the abbot. He's the eyes and ears of the abbot for the monastery. He tells him what's going on. He takes names for people to see the abbot. He's an intermediary, and secretary as well. No, I had quotes here. Can't do that. Suzuki told Mel that in Japan, the Jisha is very close to the abbot. He's the eyes and ears of the abbot for the monastery. He tells him what's going on. He takes names for people to see the abbot. He's an intermediary and secretary as well. He wanted me to inform on him. He wanted me to... That was funny. He takes names for... No. He wanted me to inform him what was going on, but I didn't know anything. A lot of things were going on that I didn't know about. I never told him about people sleeping around or anything like that. Suzuki said, when I walk around Tassajara, I don't see anything, and I don't hear anything. And that was fine with Mel, too. It wasn't a big problem anyway. The life there was rewarding and demanding enough without entangling extracurricular activities. For balance, some of us had excess energy, and as Philip Whalen dubbed it, did noodle. Oh, that's great. Oh, Philip had such a way with words and such a dry, smooth delivery. And as Philip Whalen dubbed it, did noodle some when the opportunity arose. That usually didn't cause too much of a stir in Suzuki's low-key approach. That usually didn't cause too much of a stir, as Suzuki's low-key approach didn't let our tendencies toward Puritanism take hold. All considered, I'd say a pretty wholesome mix. Alan Marlowe was an enthusiastic hedonist who loved men and women and anything they could do or take together. But that was all on hold while he was at Zen Center, especially while he was at Tassajara. Rather, he channeled his overflowing enthusiasm into his practice and amassing an enormous private library of spiritual and occult books, most of which were well outside of the approach we were involved with. When I asked how he could afford all those books, he said that his estranged wife, Diane DePrima, was supporting his practice. He was Suzuki's Anja, second assistant for miscellaneous... He was Suzuki's Anja. I never know how to describe... that's not true. This is a neat way to describe the Anja. He was Suzuki's Anja, second assistant for miscellaneous, such as making tea for Suzuki's guests and meetings. No, I'd add here, cabin cleaning. Second for miscellaneous, such as cabin cleaning. Boink. Making tea for Suzuki's guests and meetings. There it is. It's already there. I didn't need to do that. I've noticed that when I'm reading through something I'm working on, don't automatically add something that occurs to you. It might happen very soon after that. That's a very typical thing to happen. So, all right, he was Suzuki's Anja, second assistant for miscellaneous, such as making tea for Suzuki's guests and meetings. The Anja cleans the abbot's... needs an apostrophe. Pardon. Cabin while the abbot is out. Thus, they miss a lot of zazen, which was considered a sacrifice as well as an honor. Yeah, that's true, but we just say, well, that's his practice. Should I add that sentence? Yeah, I think that's a cool sentence. All right, let's add that. And we'd say that's his practice, and yeah, that's good enough. We'd say that's his practice. Now, the question here is, should I put that's his practice in quotes? I think I won't. Here's my attitude toward quotes. Use them as little as possible. Use them when you really need them. But if it's clear, I might lose out on that because, see, other people will go over this. They'll say, no, in a case like this, you really should put the quotes in because you're saying that's exactly what they say. We'll see. I'll just leave it like that for now. We'd say that's his practice. The Anja spends more time with the abbot than anyone, and Alan spent more time than others because of his many talents and assertiveness. Alan had a creative, theatrical style, was exacting in tending to Suzuki's cabin, adding flowers and little stones here and there, and he had managed to create a unique role for himself in the procession to the Zendo for zazen and ceremonies. The last round, see, right then I wanted to add some about that. Oh, well, tell what it's like. Tell what he was like. He'd bring in his, he used to be in theater and stuff. And Alan was always in theater. He was a living theater. And he would cover the gamut of characters' emotions and expressions. Sometimes be very sweet and gentle and sensitive, and sometimes being overbearing and sadistic and mean. And or sometimes be self-deprecating and reflective, and at other times, seriously, claiming to be the avatar of the age. All right. I probably say all that in the future, but I just thought I had it here. Such a character. The last round of the Han sounding, Shunryu Suzuki, in his soft brown robes, was on his way to the Zendo to give the evening talk. Behind him, in black robes, followed Mel, holding incense, forehead high, between index fingers and thumbs. Alan followed with a time-worn incense pot. Suzuki was less than 5 feet. The 2 members of his retinue each added another 8 inches, so the 3 of them looked like a human staircase moving along. So my question there is it clear that this thing with Alan following behind with this thing, that never happened beforehand? I don't know, I don't think, or since. The Anja going with the Jisha, following the abbot, or the Doshi. Doshi is the person who presides. So it might be the abbot, it might be the head monk, it might be somebody else, Anyway, I don't know if any other Anja follow behind the Jisha. But it's interesting, huh? I mean, look at that. Alan, who was allowed to insert his creativity and theatrics into the very procession of Suzuki and going to the Zendo. He wasn't told that's not our way, or whatever. It was allowed to happen. I think that's interesting. Outdoor Coleman lamps were in the twilight. mosquitoes and bats swirling around in the air. Most students were already settled in their seats. Guests were left with pretty much the run of the place, a few of them lingering over the red tablecloths in the dining room and told by a server eager to get to the lecture that the last person should blow out the kerosene lamp. I think I should say the last person to leave. Now, normally I would say the last person out, but I don't like the same word repeating too near itself. See, the last person out to leave should blow out the kerosene lamp. So I just immediately, I can see that. I don't like that. So that's not anything anybody told me or I read. That's just something I do. So that the last person to leave should blow out the kerosene lamp. And the way you blow out a kerosene lamp is you put your hand on one side of you do not turn them down. You put your hand on one side of the glass chimney and blow against your hand, and your hand's at a tilt facing down. So it's like at a 45-degree angle. So when your breath comes straight across and hits it, it bounces straight down into the glass. Now, I will not add that to the text. That's the sort of thing I'd like to do, and maybe there'd be another time. But, I could go on and on with tangents. All right. Some guests would try out the lecture. Stan, another former North Beach bohemian, now the treasurer and head of the office, stood outside the screen door to the Zendo so that he could still answer the phone or take care of late arriving guests and smoke his hand-rolled cigarettes, one after another. Suzuki took the incense from Mel and placed it straight down in the ashes, sitting in a small earthen pot before the stone Gandhara Buddha statue. Bowed 3 times to the floor while a brass bowl tolled. Stepped over to his seat, pulled his robes up some, sat on the round brown zafu, brushed the soles of his feet clean with his hands, crossed his legs, arranged his robes in his lap, rocked back and forth sideways a few times, coughed, cleared his throat, and settled in for the lecture. On the other side of a 3-foot-high wooden partition, on either side of a 3-foot-high wooden partition, 4 rows of students sat before him on black zafu, on flat black zabuton, on tatami mats. Those whose seats were further back moved up front, placing their cushions on the shiny, time-darkened magenta linoleum aisles. Suzuki placed his hands together. We began a brief chant at the prompt of a small bronze bell, and then there was silence, except for the usual evening orchestra of crickets and the rustle of the last of the dining room crew, guest cooks and dishwashers entering, bowing, and sitting as close as they could get. It was his first of 6 lectures. No, I'm going to say it was the first. It was the first of 6 lectures he would give on the echo, brief chants recited by a lone person after each group chant in service. The purpose was offering the merit of the chanting to a whole slew of those living, departed, and symbolic. The recitations were in classical Buddhist Japanese. I was studying them with him at the time, so they were doubly interesting to me. As usual, Suzuki took the subject far from any literal understanding. The first echo, after the Heart Sutra, was for Shakyamuni Buddha, whom he said could be the historical Buddha, or Dharma Buddha, or our own original nature. Also mentioned were Bodhidharma, who was the first Chinese ancestor, Dogen, who founded Soto Zen in Japan, and Manjushri, representing women. Oops, two mistakes there. I said Manjushri instead of Manjushri, and I said representing women, and I didn't even notice it till I went over it. Now, Manjushri represents wisdom, but of course, in my heart, I think of wisdom as being female. Yeah, I took a drink of that, and she said, yes, women's wisdom. Now I have a thought here, but I won't try to enter it in writing. But I'll make a mental note. This word echo, it's E-K-O, not to be confused with E-C-H-O, but it does have something in common with it. So maybe I mention that later because it's interesting, because E-C-H-O, hello, 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 are sounds that follow the original sounds. So the echo, and I don't know the kanji for echo. That would be an interesting thing to find out. Look, see, what I'll do is I'll just put a little XXX here after echo, and I think I'll remember what I'm talking about. I don't know what it literally means. Anyway, all right. Also mentioned were Bodhidharma, who was the first Chinese ancestor, Dogen, who founded Soto Zen in Japan, and Manjushri, representing wisdom. I'm going to say Manjushri, a mythical Bodhisattva. Manjushri, representing wisdom. And I'm going to put an XXX after mythical. I remember Teigen Dan Layton had a way of defining that. He used another term. He would say something like, there was something hyphenated, something mythical. A little more than just mythical. And the word mythical can be used in several ways. Like it can be used, like, if I recall right, Ken Wilber in his order of ascending, expanding consciousness of society, our way of understanding religion. Mythical was before, I don't know, I can't remember, existential or something. I could go look that up. But I use mythical, like he was using mythical like as in it's the superstitious, to mean superficial understanding of those things. But I think of mythical as being transcendent, a la Joseph Campbell, as being a representation of something that we don't really have the words for. So we have a mythical object, or like the Jesus with his parables. They were the purpose of them, and Jesus said everything he said was parables. But it's a way of talking about something you don't have words for, so you hint at it through a parable or through a myth that evokes that expanded higher reality or lower reality. If you take Brother David Steindl-Rast said that the abbot of the monastery where he was on the East Coast said we fall into heaven. So there we have a lower reality being the expanded way. All right, so anyway, all right. We are supposed to resume, this is a quote, and, I don't have to say this is a quote. Look, I'll throw a little bell in. Maybe not as long as the bells as I did in Crooked Cucumber, where there was like 4 seconds of silence. 4 seconds of bell ringing and then fading, and then 4 seconds of silence. That's before the, I'll tell you what, I'll do that before the quotes that are like set aside, like at the beginning of something, or but if they're part of a run-on description like this, maybe I'll just throw in a little ding to set them aside, or maybe I won't. I don't know. See, reading is different, right, from hearing, because you don't hear the quotation marks unless somebody says quote. And I don't like saying quote, see? It would be Manjushri, a mythical bodhisattva representing wisdom. Quote, we are supposed to, ding. I don't have to say it, I'll throw it in. But maybe I'd better go ding to remind myself. All right, ding. We are supposed to resume the true nature of Manjushri. That is why we have Manjushri in our Zendo. Ding. We didn't literally have Manjushri or a statue of Manjushri in our Zendo, as is traditional, because it served also as a Buddha hall for services and a Dharma hall for lectures. We weren't being traditional in a lot of ways. Traditionally, master and monks sit at the same level in a Zendo, but this Zendo had a platform elevated a couple of feet, maybe 18 inches, above the level of the floor where the rank and file sat. Up there would sit the teachers, head monk, and Doan in charge of hitting the bells. It worked well to have them and a lecturer up where we could see them, but that's not why there was a platform. There was a massive cement and stone hearth below it that was easier to cover than to take out. We were also being traditional in many ways. Suzuki said that someday we would have many good teachers at Tassajara and an American Buddhism, but not if it's just something we make for the sake of convenience. It should be connected with some spiritual relationship. Without this kind of effort, you cannot establish American Buddhism in its true sense. So if you think about this, you have to understand Japanese Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, and Indian Buddhism too as a Buddhist. So it is not so easy. We should be concentrated on this point from now on. These lectures on the echo and reciting and studying them seemed to be one way we were reaching out to better understand the culture and practice of our ancestors, especially of Soto Zen in Japan. I felt as if Suzuki were giving in somewhat, I felt as if Suzuki were giving in somewhat to a new direction Tassajara practice had taken. None of these lectures on the echo or the prior series that summer on the Sandokai would have happened if Tatsugami hadn't come and introduced these and other new elements into the services. Before him, we just chanted the same thing we'd done for years at Sokoji on Bush Street in San Francisco, the Prajna Paramita Hridaya, the Heart Sutra, the national anthem of emptiness, in the Sino-Japanese 3 times in the morning and once each before lunch and dinner. The new regimen was interesting and involving. Suzuki said Tatsugami was teaching the art of Zen and cautioned us not to forget the heart. You know, when I read that last line, I think that might have been in Crooked Cucumber. And then I think, well, if something was in Crooked Cucumber, should it automatically be not here? I think there should be very, very little overlap. But some overlap would be necessary, I would think. So I'm not inclined to even look and see if that was there now. But, you know I'll probably continue to have that thought when I say it, and I'll get curious and look. Very easy thing for me to find, I just pull up the file for Crooked Cucumber and search for the phrase, art of Zen or something. All right. I enjoyed studying the new chants and chanting them, including the echo, as I was one of the 6 students chosen to be Doan, which were those who took care of all the new and complicated Zendo business. But I also missed the simplicity and elegance of the way it had been, and the dynamism. For the daily experience of chanting the Heart Sutra 3 times in a row in the morning had been powerful. The introductory title of the sutra only happened at the beginning of the first time it was recited. Makanya Haramita Shingyo, belted out with its extended final syllable rising and falling dramatically, the tempo accentuated by the mokugyo. Probably should define that. Yeah, I don't think we've got wooden drum yet. Wooden drum. The woodfish, wooden drum. The woodfish drum, see, it's wooden drum, but moku gyo is woodfish. The wooden fish drum, that's cool. Even if it's a little confusing. So the tempo accentuated by the mokugyo, wooden fish drum, gradually increased as we chanted, and there was no pause as we pounced into the next round. We were solidly together and energized in a way energized in a way I have not experienced since. To me, it was like a train taking off into the wisdom that has gone beyond. And I love trains. I think what I should answer in there, okay, the tempo gradually increased, so I don't need to add that. It's there. Yeah. Gradually increased. I think I should add charging ahead. There was a feeling like we were charging ahead toward the end. We were solidly together in energy and energized in a way I've not experienced since. And then I'm just going to add charging ahead as one toward the finale. To me, it was like a train taking off into the wisdom that had gone beyond, and I love trains. That's true. Before Tatsugami, we'd only used one echo, the brief, universal echo, always recited by Suzuki or Katagiri or Kobun. Not always. Sometimes the student be filling in and have to do it. It was translated on the old chant card thus. I'm going to say it was translated on the old chant card by Suzuki thus, or it was translated by Suzuki on the old chant card thus. I wished I had started off long ago calling him Shunryu instead of Suzuki and just leaving it. Because look, when we talk about Dogen, I don't know what his family name was, Matsumoto or something. We don't say Matsumoto, we say Dogen, his Buddhist name. But the thing is, it sounds rude to say Shunryu. It's interesting, everybody says Suzuki Roshi. They always say Suzuki Roshi. I don't like to do that. I don't think that's right. You can do that when you're trying to be polite, when you're speaking to other people in Zen Center, and you're being like sort of reverent or something. It's an honorific. But not in this book. But listen, let me tell you, I don't know how many people are there. How many are there? 100 around who've been studying Zen for years and years. How many are there with transmission? I mean, they're all Roshi. I just want to call everybody Roshi, and the word gets too precious, and people hang on to it and are attached to it and get offended if they're not called Roshi and stuff like. And actually, there are very few who are called Roshi, while there are very many who could be called Roshi, if looking at the criteria that the very few who are called Roshi, why are they called Roshi, and all the others are not called Roshi, when actually the criteria is the same. I mean, they've got transmission. And we don't have all those levels and stuff like they've got in Japan. And it's a Japanese word. It's such a Japanese word. And they only use it in monasteries in Japan. Everyday people don't use that word. They didn't even use it at Rinso-in, Suzuki's temple. They'd call him Shunryu-san. I'm not saying his son or his grandchildren would, but people who had known him and revered him would do that. And I know if you've listened to past podcasts, you've probably heard me go on about that before. All right, so anyway, making that clear, but I go on and call him Suzuki because that's what we're used to. If I thought I could get away with it, I would change it and like make this whole book just use Shunryu, and we can consider that. It's better because there's no other Shunryu, and Suzuki is like Smith. And there's other Suzukis, and there's his wife is Suzuki. His maybe, I don't know. Did she take his name? Yeah, I mean, we called her Mitsu Suzuki here. And his son would visit, and there were other Suzukis. But if we called him Shunryu, there's only one Shunryu. I found another Shunryu Suzuki. I Googled for it once, and good Lord, was it really, literally, was it somebody I almost have a memory of it being a priest in Texas, but it's such a vague memory, I'm not sure. It's not a normal name. All right, so here we are. So before Tatsugami, we'd only used one echo, the brief universal echo, always recited by Suzuki or Katagiri or Kobu, almost always. It was translated by Suzuki on the old chant card thus: "What I pray is that this merit pervade universally, and we Buddhists and all sentient beings achieve Buddhism." We could probably come up with a better translation. I could ask Taigen what he'd suggest, and Shohaku Okamura. As usual, Suzuki was following the whole schedule with us. Zazen, services, the ceremonial orioki meals. During work period, he'd be gathering or setting stones in his garden or walls. All right. During work period, he'd be gathering or setting stones in his garden or walls with Mel and Alan and others from time to time. Later, after his bath, he'd be preparing for lecture or for the lay ordination to come in the city. Mel had mentioned to him that there hadn't been a lay ordination since 1962. And he felt there was something needed. He said he thought it would pull things together in some way. A couple of days later, Suzuki said to Mel, we're going to have lay ordination. So now Suzuki was coming up with Zen names for each of his 36 ordainees to be. Suzuki's cabin by the creek had been moved, and on that vacant space, a new, larger abbot's cabin was to be. See, I can't say to be and then to be that close. Was planned, all right? Was in the planning. Ed Brown did most of the work on the stone foundation. For a time, Suzuki, Mel, and Alan concentrated on building a stone wall on the steep creek bank there. To assist human muscle in the stonework, a tripod was built out of 2.5-inch pipe filled with block and tackle and chains. Wheelbarrows, the old Chevy pickup, and the Dodge Power Wagon dump truck were on call, and on the latter, Paul Disco attached a winch with a long cable that could do some heavy pulling. The top of a junked car off the road was cut off and turned upside down to make a sled that could ride over rough creek or mountainside terrain with a stone passenger. Mel. So here I just have Mel : Interesting, huh? Maybe I should say. Mel said, well, I don't know. I'll put XXX. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's make it Mel said. That colon's sort of weird. I don't know. Mel said, we'd work for hours on a rock to get it in place, and Suzuki Roshi would say, no, that's not quite right. So he'd take it up again with the tripod, and no matter how much we worked on something, we might still have to do it over again. He never left anything that he felt wasn't right. It was very hot during the summer, and I would take a washcloth and wet it and put it over Suzuki Roshi's head. That's really bad. You know what I did? I had Suzuki dash Roshi with a small r the first time, and the second time 2 words, Suzuki capitalized and Roshi capitalized. Now that sort of thing would of course be caught later, but I gotta make them the same. So I'm gonna say Suzuki dash Roshi. I don't know. All right, I guess. Put it over. See, I use Roshi if I'm quoting. And that's the way we talked. And I would take a washcloth and wet it and put it over Suzuki Roshi's head. Sometimes he'd take a nap in the afternoon over in the cool of the dormitory. He would move a rock with his whole body. He was a thin little guy, you know. There was nothing we did that he didn't do. Working with him day after day, moving those rocks was a great experience. We didn't worry about being quiet. It was natural. There wasn't any excess conversation. We were just talking about what we were doing. No, I should say that if we talked, or when we talked, when we talked, gotta hit the right keys. When we talked, we were just talking about what we were doing, dash. We were always focused on it. He'd work all day and take his nap. You might notice that I just edited a direct quote, with quote marks around it. And I'll do that as long as it doesn't change the meaning and it makes the reading smoother, I think, or more clear. I'll do that. No problem. And I don't indicate where I do that. That's too tedious and scholastic and all that. But one can always go back to the original interview and see what the absolute correct transcription would be. Most of them are exact or almost exact. Then I have go the baths. Go to the baths. Go to the baths. And after dinner, he'd work on the lecture he'd give that night. Now that the first of these, you know what I think right there. Mel is saying what he'd do after the baths, and I think I had some comment on that earlier. So I'm going to say here, check for repeat of this last point. I think I said after the baths he'd work on the lecture I said he'd work on the lecture or the names for the Roxas. He was doing the Roxas. He had both those things. The Roxas, because he would draw the characters for every one. The robe chant that we did in the morning, and there was a lot of characters there. And then he had to choose a name for each person and do those characters. They were very nice. I've got one. I've got 2 Roxas, one from the lay ordination, and one from the priest's ordination. I'm wondering do I have them both here? I might just have one of them here, and I can't remember which one. It's right in here. I have a little altar up here, a little altar that Katrinka made. I confess I do not tend to make altars. But Katrinka makes altars, and yeah, and then Kadek, our house cleaner, she goes around and makes offerings, and we've got incense going at them and stuff here and there. All right, so anyway, so he'd work all day and take his nap, go to the baths, and after dinner, he'd work on the lecture he'd give that night. So I have checked for repeat of this last point, but you see, I mentioned that he's working on the rock suits, and so maybe it needs to stay. So that's all right. Maybe it's all right. Now that the first of 3 practice periods with Tatsugami was over, the guest season had come, and Suzuki was there with us for weeks at a time. Now I wonder about saying all that. We know that it was over. We know it's the guest season. Why don't we just cut that out and say, what a wonderful summer. I'm just going to cut that out and say, what a wonderful summer, huh? What a wonderful summer. Period. Suzuki was there with us for weeks at a time. Even though it didn't have the intensity and isolation from regular society of the practice period, it was a peak in our experience of practicing with him there. He coughed a little when he spoke. Ha! Phew. A little? I'm going to say he coughed a little, and sometimes a lot. Now, see, I'm wondering what to do about commas there. He coughed a little, and I'm not going to put any comma. I can tell you, people will go over this. And if Bill Redican goes over this, he's the comma person, and he knows exactly where he thinks a comma should be and shouldn't be. And I think he will be going over it. You know what? He's going over all the Tassajara. He's going over all the Crooked Cucumber chapters and audio in the new text. I have, the updated text where I made some corrections and changes. He's comparing them chapter by chapter to the book, and he's got the second printing, because the second printing had a number of corrections over the first printing. So he's giving me detailed comments, and not too many, because I did pretty well with the audio and the text. But, I just don't have time, and I can't listen to it over and check all that. And Bill is so good at details. Bill's the one that created the verbatim Suzuki Roshi lecture, the verbatim. He did that project, and what a great contribution that was. That was done, around the turn of the century, and I was involved in that and all that. But Bill was the manager of it, working at the Zen Center, and all the verbatim. Now we've made a lot of little changes to his verbatim, and we do them a little differently than he did. But his, as he did them, are maintained in the archive we have on ShunyuSuzuki.com. It says it's PDFC original transcript, original verbatim transcript. You can see Bill's thing. We keep going over these things. I mean, it's like right now we got like 3,000 pages of lectures in there. We've added like 100 entries, because we add little tiny things sometimes, or if we find a longer one, we add it. Just anything Suzuki said that we've got, we'll have in the lecture. Like if there's some paragraph in a Windbell, some quote from him that doesn't exist anywhere else, we'll throw it into the lecture archive We'll give it a number and an entry. But then we have a sort of corrected verbatim version, are updated, and you think, well, I mean, they were very, very exacting, but look, Crooked Cucumber's, 450 pages, and we're still finding errors in it. So there's always errors. And we have people going over now. Wendy Piercing is carefully going over the audio for the lectures, and Peter Ford too. And so we're posting, and she's making light edits, and we're posting that, and she's really doing an incredible job, and she and Peter, and uploading that. And if come to any stumbling blocks or things, I'm advising on it, and don't know what to do, I can make the final choice. But basically, they're doing it, so that's really great. But anyway, all right. So Bill Redican is going over all that, and we're going to come up with and he points out little tiny things that are really important. He's just started doing this. He just sent me. We're going backwards. He's just sent me chapter 18, the audio, and he's doing them fast. Oh God, I make my thing. Oh my God, I have to keep up with him. The audio and the transcript with, little notes and corrections, and like he pointed out some phrase I said twice in the audio. I'll correct myself. Then I go back when I listen to it, and I'll take the first one out. Well, sometimes I forgot to do that. And things are, I miss a word, or I say a word wrong, or I say the wrong word. Not a great deal, just a little bit here and there. So we'll come up with a really good audio version and transcript, and I'll try to get the publisher. I'll try to get a second edition out. We'll see. All right. Where were we? Oh, he coughed a little and sometimes a lot when he spoke. Oh, no, Howard, see, I told you I should never add something without looking to see if it's ahead. It is ahead. He coughed a little when he spoke. Sometimes a lot. God, I didn't look very far ahead at all. I didn't. Take your own advice, David. All right, he coughed a little when he spoke. Sometimes a lot. And had been doing this for over a year. But he was over his bad flu of the year before and full of energy. Now I'm going to make a note right here. How far back does the coughing go? Maybe it goes back to the first. I'm not sure why I said for over a year. His bath hour was separate and taken earlier than the rest of us. Mel often joined him and scrubbed his back. Bath time for us was silent, but Suzuki wasn't beyond bending that rule. One day, both Mel and Alan, oh, look at this. One day, Mel and Alan both joined him. I'm going to take out the second one. One day, both Mel and Alan joined him. Suzuki obliquely brought up Alan's love life and quipped, "It's all right to have as many girlfriends as you want, and as long as you remember all their names." When I heard about that, I thought it must be some old Japanese joke. Ed Sadison was a guest student at Tassajara on the dishwashing schedule, and the first day he went to the baths early. Being a new student, he said, see, I'm going to have to put it there. So I'm saying, because this is a quote. Being a new student, he said, I didn't know about the abbot's private bath time and barged right in on him. He was sitting on the floor washing himself with a pail and filling the small tub with water to soak in. He looked up at me and asked if I wanted to take a bath. I was unsure what to do and suggested I could go into the big plunge. Roshi said that they usually washed before entering the plunge. Somehow I interpreted this as an invitation to join him in the small tub. By the time I was undressed, the small tub was full and Roshi was finishing washing with his pail. He offered the tub to me, and as I was climbing in, I saw to my surprise that he was leaving. At the door, he paused as if having a second thought, turned around and said, "Don't worry." He said it in such a way that I was immediately relieved of my embarrassment of having taken his bath. In fact, I felt wonderful. Suzuki would usually ask if there were any questions after he'd finished his lecture. One evening, Mel said, "The other day when I was doing the mokugyo, there was this small spider that crawled across the top of the mokugyo, and there was nothing I could do." He laughed. There was laughter from the audience. I went a little bit off to the side, but he went right into it. It was too powerful for him to escape, and the next. Suzuki cut him off and said, You didn't kill it," halfway between a statement and a question. Mel said, "Well, something did." Laughter. That's what we put in the lecture archive. Laughs means the person speaking. Well, and it was always in the lecture archive, I would think. I wonder if there's an exception. It was always Suzuki. But here it's Mel. And laughter means the audience. So I think I'll continue that. Something did. I don't know, in reading it, like something did. Laughter. Maybe it's just better not to try to add that. It seems a little forced. Mel said, "Something did." Suzuki, by mistake, happened in that way. See, I'm just putting the straight transcription from the archive in here. So maybe I'll leave it this way. It just says, Mel. I'm just going to leave it the way it was. Right. I changed it to Mel said here. So Mel, something did. Suzuki, SR, right? Suzuki Roshi. By mistake, happened in that way. Mel, yeah, but I couldn't stop. Suzuki, but you hit some other place. Mel, some other place, but he still went right into it. Suzuki, yeah, it can't be helped. Buddha killed him. Laughing. He may, see, I just said laughing to cover both laughs and laughter. He may be very happy. Yeah, to live in this world is not so easy. Suzuki then riffed on watching children playing by bridges and things they can fall off of all of the cars on the freeway going so fast, and a very old man with hundreds of children, grandchildren, etc., and how easy it is to be frightened and worried about death. But he said, we can't survive with just feelings like that. We have to go deeper. We can't survive without killing. You have to do that sometime. And then, after having taken Mel off the hook, he said, and if it is absolutely necessary, you should stop hitting the mokugyo, even though, all of us get into confusion. Yeah, sometime. Not so easy. It was a good summer. As reported in the Windbell, the upper and lower gardens were flourishing. Amidst the flowers and bees, one could find in those beds sweet potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, beans, peppers, gobo, daikon, lettuce, cucumbers, summer and winter squash, pumpkins and turnips. Our neighbors were raccoons, deer, fox, wild boar, bobcats, a rare mountain lion, rattlesnakes, stinging scorpions, newtails, woodpeckers, red-tailed hawks, ladybugs, crickets, flies, no-see-ums in the eyes at dusk, mosquitoes by the creek, crayfish and trout, yerba, santa poison, oak, pine, madrone, manzanita, sycamore, and yucca on the steep slopes, some with tall blooms shooting up over head height. The large, wonderful stone-walled kitchen was finally finished and in use. There was plenty of room now for guest meals and student meals to be prepared, bread baked, pots and pans washed and set on drying racks. There was even a little area for student snack food, once forbidden. The little shack we'd been preparing meals out of was now a good-sized pantry, and the county health inspector wouldn't have to say again, let's not go to the kitchen. Paul and Nils, we don't even know who they are. I mean, Paul's been introduced a little. Paul, all right, I'll just leave it for now. Paul and, well, we could say Paul the Builder. Let's say Paul the Builder and Nils the Dane. Dane capitalized. Now, I've mentioned Paul before. I think I won't say the builder. I'll say Paul and Nils the Dane, because it's the first time we've heard about him. Paul and Nils the Dane were continuing work on the other end of the roof below, which was to be the entryway to the Zendo with a library above. They were both experienced in carpentry and construction from different traditions, and I would frequently hear them arguing up there as I walked by. Mark Alexander, who was new to Tassajara, worked silently with them. He was one of those people who came to Zen Center soft-spoken, focused, good at detail. Break time, he could be found doing some fine woodwork up in the shop. A hardwood chest of drawers. The next year, a fine incense pot from manzanita burl he cured in the hot springs holding tank. That summer, Suzuki brought down the statue of Prince Shotoku, who imported Buddhism to Japan in 522, bringing back from Korea many Buddhist statues and texts. Suzuki had it in his cabin, but on 4 and 9 days, when there was a relaxed schedule, it would go to a student cabin, and then he and others would come visit and have tea. Suzuki Roshi's wife, I'm going to add Mitsu. I'm going to add it without commas. Suzuki Roshi's wife, Mitsu, came down from the city and invited us to attend her tea ceremony, which she performed in lovely kimono. Millie Johnston came from New York and did the same, except she wore a long, flowing, pleated beige skirt. There was a Japanized cabin with shoji doors and tatami on the floor where each of them stayed when there. When Lolly Rossett hosted Suzuki in New York City a couple of years prior, they visited Millie and she performed a tea ceremony for them. When it was over, Suzuki said, "That was wonderful." So, now I'm going to put that in quotes, and it wasn't, it just was run on, but I think we have to emphasize it here. Suzuki said, "That was wonderful." So she did it again, and so she did it again. And then again. And before she could do it again, Lolly fibbed Suzuki had an appointment to keep. Suzuki told her on the way out, "You know how to take care of me." Lolly had practiced tea ceremony for years and had all the accoutrements neatly placed on a tray in her apartment, but she didn't bother Suzuki with it. She knew he'd been a tea ceremony guest countless times and had noticed that when she did tea ceremony with Mitsu, that he'd leave the room. When he departed her apartment for the last time, he paused at the tea ceremony tray and said, "You're a great tea master." Nancy Sheldon's brother came to visit her. He was with Philip Kaplow's Rochester Zen Center. Kaplow had received permission to teach from Yasutani. Oh, I've got to say more than Yasutani. From Hakuun Yasutani, I better say Roshi. From Hakuun. Now, see, I don't like the dash Roshi. I like separate words, so I'm going to do that. From Hakuun Yasutani Roshi, and Kaplow students worked on koans with him. They had a reputation of having a more fierce approach to practice than we did. Then I learned heed. Now, I can't say heed there. We've lost who I would refer to. What do you think it's? He'd been playing bass for the Fugs. What do you think? Yasutani been playing bass with the Fugs? No. Then we learned Nancy's brother had been playing bass for the Fugs, an outrageous and to me a most wonderful band of barely musicians founded by Ed Sanders. I've got to use his name. Founded by the East Coast poet, oh no, let's just say, founded by the poet Ed Sanders. I think I got his name right. I almost excitedly told him I'd seen them. Now, I think I better say the Fugs. I almost excitedly told him I'd seen the Fugs in the Panhandle of Golden Gate Park a few years back and loved them, and especially their song, Nothing, which went, I love it, Monday nothing, Tuesday nothing, Wednesday nothing, Thursday nothing, Like that. It's so great. And oh man, it just keeps listing things. Nothing, 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 nothing. And through the rest of the week, oh God, see, I did it again. Poet Ed Sanders was their brilliant leader. See, I did it again. Don't add things without looking to see if they're ahead. All right. See. Yeah. Most wonderful band of barely musicians. I almost excitedly told him I'd seen the Fugs in the panhandle of Golden Gate Park in Golden Gate Park a few years back and loved them, and especially their song Nothing, which went Monday nothing, Tuesday nothing, Wednesday nothing, and through the rest of the week. What? Oh. See, I didn't understand that when I read it. Oh, and elaborated from there, I think would be better. Elaborated from there, never departing from the constant nothings. Poet Ed Sanders was their brilliant leader. But Nancy's brother was not impressed with them and their wicked ways. Jim Murphy roomed with Tommy Dorsey that summer. Arriving at the cabin one day, Tommy told me that Oksan, Mitsu Suzuki, the wife, right? Tommy told me that Oksan had noticed a teacup on the windowsill as being Suzuki Roshi's cup. Apparently, she was a little miffed till Tommy showed her that I had mended the broken cup. Tommy said she settled down after the explanation. The next day, Oksan came by to tell me with enthusiasm that Roshi had told her that mending of the cup was a very good practice. Marion Derby, who'd gotten the Heiko Zendo going in Los Altos, recorded and transcribed Suzuki's lectures there, and created a selection with a book in mind, received that summer the fruit of those efforts in a copy of Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, inscribed by Suzuki to her. It sounds idyllic, but the magic there was only for those who'd go through the Tangaryo initiation days. I think I should say initiatory. What do you think? Sounds idyllic, but the magic there was only for those who'd go through the Tangaryo initiation days of constant sitting. Well, that's all right. The demanding schedule, the loss of a lot of freedom. One woman who was in the kitchen remembers, we prepared 3 in that old kitchen with those. We prepared 3. I left out the word meals. We prepared 3 meals in that old kitchen with those 2 little fridges and 3 hot stoves. It was stifling. Well, this didn't belong here because they're not doing it there. I'm going to say one woman who was in the kitchen remembers the prior kitchen, who was in the new kitchen, who was now in the new kitchen. One woman who was now in the new kitchen remembers the prior kitchen We prepared 3 meals in that old kitchen with those 2 little fridges and 3 hot stoves. It was stifling. The evening gruel was awful. We sat in the Zendo in junky, thin gray robes, drenched in sweat. At the end of the summer, there was a sesshin. During some of the keen intervals between zazen periods, Cheryl and I would go down to the creek, take off our robes, go in naked, and get back to zazen on time. Ha ha ha! You know, I think that's Hartman. I think that's Trudy Hartman. And I think that's the only thing I have from her. From Bill Shirtliff's diary, April 22nd. Millions of Americans participate in anti-pollution demonstrations to mark the first Earth Day. April 25th, opening ceremony for San Francisco's Zen Center's City Center. I drive up. July 22nd, Christy Shirtliff, Bill's sister, visits Tassajara for the first time. We sleep outside on the guest dining room porch. Nice hikes down Tassajara Creek, swimming. Charlotte Silver and Charles Brooks arrive at Tassajara to teach us sensory awareness. Robert Bly comes for a day of reading poems from The Tooth Mother. Chloe Scott teaches dance. Organic John walks down the road with his sheathed knife and makes a superb salad. So, that's that page. Boy, it really goes all over the place. I don't care personally. I mean, somebody else is gonna, I really don't care. That's why I sometimes wonder, can this really be a book? Maybe it's better just for podcasts. Especially when you get older, I think I have a quote from Kurt Vonnegut. Maybe it's for the self-published novel I wrote called To Find the Girl from Perth, based on a month I spent in Perth and wild imagination and just having a lot of fun. It might have been in that one that I quoted Kurt Vonnegut had said, that I don't remember how he said it exactly, but, writers do their best work when they're younger. And hey, I'll tell you what, I bet I can find that quote. I mean, without looking to see where I used it. All right. Kurt Vonnegut, writers best work younger. Let's see if that gets it. No, it didn't get it. Let's say, try writers do their best work younger. It's not. Oh well, I can't find it. But I found it for that book. Let's see if it's on Cuke.com. See if I can find it there. I'll bet if I just search Vonnegut on there. Ooh, but that book isn't on there. It's on Cuke Annex, I think. Let's see now. Vonnegut. V-O-N-N, searching for it. Oh, here it is. Found it on Cuke.com. American male writers have done their best work by the time they're 55, and then it's pretty junky after that. I agree. I agree. I agree. Some of the songs I've done recently are up to the par of the earlier songs, though, I'd say. All right. You can hear my songs on diffusermusic.com. All right. This is way too long. I thought this was going to be short. Well, it's an hour. It's going to be an hour and a half. Okay. Well, this is not what I intended. I planned to just read it straight out. And I don't know if I'll keep doing this, but let me tell you, I got to get this podcast up pretty soon. So, my only thought is I want to take coughs out. And I won't be able to get it up for a few hours because I've got to listen to the whole thing. I'll speed it up and listen to it fast. And I'm going to leave most stuff in, all the corrections and everything. I just don't have time to fix it. And it might be more fun to listen to that way. You sort of see a process going on here anyway. Let me tell you, the work that went into Thank You and Okay and Crooked Cucumber, it went on for years, and with all sorts of people. My wife at the time, Elin, Michael Katz, my agent friend, co-conspirator, other Vichicho, Carrie Warner, who has a group in Grayton, is in a group. So many people went over it and gave advice, and jumped up and down on me and, threw things out, Tigan, Dan Layton. Linda Hess, she was good. And I'm sending her this chapter. See what she thinks of it. I apologize to those I'm leaving out because there were many people. And Crooked Cucumber, same thing. So, they'd take my junky writing and like being all over the place. And it wasn't, they would just say, hey, this is too much so-and-so. And then I had to do it. I had to do it myself. Or they'd say, throw this whole thing out. Throw it out. It's just, no. Especially Elin. Man, she was tough. But I don't know what will happen to this. I just can't spend that amount of time on it. We'll see. Okay. Thanks a lot. Take care. So, as we wrap things up here, let's take a moment to hear a word from our sponsor, which is you, dear listener. You, dear listeners, who go to the homepage of Cuke.com and click on the donate link. There's one up top, there's one near the bottom. There's also one on the Cuke Audio Podbean page. And that'll take you to the donate page where it shows how to send a check, make a PayPal donation, or become a PayPal subscriber for as little as $1 a month. And it's most easy to do. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dogette Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you, and yours, and all of us, a grand awakening.
Monday, nothing. Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday and Thursday, nothing. Friday for a change, a little more nothing. Saturday once more, nothing. Sunday, nothing. Monday, nothing. Tuesday and Wednesday, nothing. Thursday for a change, a little more nothing. Friday once more nothing. January nothing. February nothing. March and April nothing. May and June a lot more nothing. July nothing. 29 nothing. 32 nothing. 39, 45 nothing. 1965 a whole lot nothing. 1966 nothing. Reading nothing. Writing nothing. Even arithmetic nothing. Geography, philosophy, history nothing. Social anthropology, nothing. Oh, Village Voice, nothing. New Yorker, nothing. Sing out in folkways, nothing. Harry Smith and Allen Ginsberg, nothing. Poetry, nothing. And music, nothing. Painting and dancing, nothing. The world's great books, a great set of nothing.